Before we jump into this week's episode of the podcast, I want to mention that this series that we've been doing all about websites, they are presented by our good friends over at the Creative Cabana. If you want to speak to your clients and fill up your year with bookings, you need to make sure that your website, branding, and copywriting is speaking directly to those people. This is where the Creative Cabana can really help you out. The Creative Cabana is your all-inclusive destination for everything websites, branding, and copywriting. They've put together a checklist over at howtofilmweddings.com/website that can help you as you maybe do some spring cleaning on your website this time of year. All right, with that, let's jump into this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is Nick Miller, and today I am joined by my best good buddy, Mr. John Bunn, as we continue to talk about websites, because that's what we are all about these days over on the podcast. But before we get into talking about that, John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. As you know, I'm heading out to Houston this weekend to film a wedding for a sister of a bride I filmed 2 years ago. I love going back and doing, multiple weddings within a family. I think it's so cool to see people you know. I'm heading out to Houston this weekend and shooting for 3 days out there. Big welcome party, rehearsal dinner, wedding day on a ranch. Their private family ranch. It's going to be okay. I think it's going to be all right. Excited to share the footage for that. Booking season's upon us. Lots of great inquiries, lots of bookings, lots of things going well. Spring is it's almost here. I can feel it. It's my favorite time of the year when spring starts to happen. So I'm in a great mood. How about you?
Yeah, doing well. It is spring break week. And so my daughter is off in Colorado with Mima and Papa, and so that's what's going on. That's what's going on over there. But things are going well. I have in the last few weeks I delivered an Italy film. I delivered my Mexico film. Like things are going well for me also as well. Before we jump into this week's episode where we're going to talk about website and kind of the progression, when you should maybe level up your website kind of stuff, I want to mention our outsourcing link at howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing. And if you are someone that wants to get something off of your plate, we have some vetted editors over there at howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing that can help you clean up your backlog, can help you get ahead. And we even have a service like Wedding Post House that can help it so that they can kind of cull your footage and sync some stuff up together, but then you still will get to do all the creative stuff, but you don't have to do the stuff that just is kind of mindless and boring, but it takes a little bit of time to do it. So if you'd like to check out our partners and our sponsors over there, head over to howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing. So John, today we are talking about website progression, how to level up your website as you grow. And I'm going to let you kick us off today.
Yeah, so we are in week 3 of this series on websites. We've walked through mistakes. We've talked about what does your website say about your brand. With the podcast, we try our best to give you as much info as possible to help you. And I think sometimes just taking a step back and looking and saying, okay, where are we at in our brand, and what does that constitute when it comes to what type of investment we should be making into our website, our branding? And so we kind of wanted to just talk about the progression of a wedding filmmaker, and maybe you're new, maybe you've been doing this for a while, but kind of lay out the progression we see when people are getting into the industry and how it works. Because I think we see people that have been in the industry for 15 plus years, like myself or Nick, and it's like, oh my goodness, their website, their branding, all the stuff they're doing, I'm nowhere near that, so I'm discouraged and I want to quit. Or I need to be doing that today in order to be legitimate. And we just kind of wanted to debunk some of that and just kind of walk through a progression from just getting started to advanced. And so the first thing that we wanted to talk about in 2024, if you're just getting going, if you're new, whatever, there's nothing wrong with just starting even with social media or like starting with Instagram. Some people can fill their calendar just by having an Instagram page. Maybe that's where you're at right now. You've got a couple of films on Instagram. You're doing some work. You're making some connection. That's not the end of the world. But Nick, what would it say about a company if all they have is an Instagram page? Who should be like, who is this okay for? What comes to your mind?
Yeah. So now I will say, as I get into this, I am an elder millennial. And, whenever I started this in, 2012 and John back in 2007, it was, website is king. You have to have a website. That's the first thing. If you want to be a legitimate business, you need a website. And here in 2024, I don't think that is as important whenever you're getting started. I don't think that you need to necessarily invest a ton of time and energy into a website when you're just getting going. But I do think that having a website is going to legitimize your business. It's going to make you look more professional. It's going to make people think that you are running a legit business rather than, someone that just does this because you have an Instagram account. And to me personally, if I go to someone and I'm looking to hire their services and all they have is an Instagram account, they do not have a website, and the links that they have are just to, it's a link tree thing where like, here's my YouTube channel and here's my TikTok and here's my inquiry form that's just, like a one-page kind of something that's not actually, like, to me, that feels sketchy or cheap or something like that. Now, again, I am putting this in the context of being a 40-something-year-old older person. Now, I don't know how Gen Z, like if you're 23 right now, 20, like I don't know how that age, that demographic feels about doing that. But I'm saying I think that having a website is definitely something that you should go toward. The other big thing why John and I are big pushers of having websites is that now you are going to own the content that it's out there. Like Instagram isn't going anywhere, but what if it did? And you built your entire business on Instagram, or as the algorithm does, the algorithm changes and now your reach goes from 1,000 people to 10. What are you going to do? So that's a big reason why you should consider, going for a website rather than just an Instagram. And then, a pro of it is, doesn't cost anything to start an Instagram account too. So, I think I chatted a little bit about that. Anything you want to add? Anything more you want to add?
Like, I just don't think, I think it's mainly for people that are just getting going. It's a great spot where it's like, oh shoot, I am starting to dabble in filming weddings. I don't know if I want to make this a thing. It's a good starting point, but we would recommend quickly getting to what we would say in the next progression would be more of like the beginning or beginner phase when it comes to websites. And what I mean about that is there are so many ways to get just a one-page website up, something that like we have on our website at howtofilmweddings.com, website templates that's like a one-page scroll where it's got all the info you really need. It's easy to drag and drop, put your info in there, put your logos in there, just make it really easy as a beginner to have somewhere for people to land. We look at this more of a stopgap kind of vibe, to where it's just like, okay, this is going to get me by so that I do have a website and I can control with my copy. I can control, just the way it feels, the branding, the colors. I can change the fonts, all that kind of stuff as like a beginner website. I know when I first got going, I used something called iWeb, which was Apple's version. There were no templates you could buy. I just started from scratch and just like made my own iWeb site. It was terrible, but at least it got the job done where I could like send people there to, redeemedproductions.com at the time. And like I owned that. It gave it to where I could create an email address, john@redeemedproductions.com was my email. Like that kind of stuff. It was more in the beginning phase. It was customized, but just barely. It was more of like a one-page thing. And so if you're currently in the phase of like, well, I've got an Instagram account, but I don't have a website, your next step is going to be getting some type of beginner type of a template. We're not recommending that you go and buy a $5,000 website redesign right now, unless you just have the funds or whatever. But like, it's okay to take these steps. And so maybe you filmed a couple of weddings, you've got a couple of reels now, you've got a couple of, portfolio pieces. Cool. Grab a little template, little 1-page something, a little 2-page something, and then you put the work in yourself. Nick, what would the pros and cons kind of this stop in your website progression be?
Yeah. Again, I think the biggest pro, like you mentioned, you now have a website, you have a domain, like you have some stuff. And so it's like you get to determine what is on that page. And so that's going to be huge for you. I think it's just another place where you are there. And then I really believe that this helps legitimize you as a business. Some of the cons, there is going to be an expense to this. I would recommend something like Wix or Squarespace or something that is a little bit easier to use, to set up. Showit, which is what John and I use and what we recommend for websites. It's a little more, the learning curve's a lot steeper. You can do a lot more. And so I guess the big con, it's going to cost money, and then you're going to have some time and energy, some sweat equity that you're going to have to put into the website to get it looking how you want it to look. The other question is, are you a designer? Are you able to do that? Where is your skill set with this? And so it could be one of those things where maybe this is a pro for you because you kind of have that in your toolbox and you can kind of mess with that and do that. But it could be a big con because maybe you don't know how to open up Illustrator and make a logo or kind of get a palette together, and you don't know how to do those things. So that's where I would recommend, finding some sort of like a cheap-ish 1-page kind of template that you can just install, change the fonts, change the colors, and then you're good to roll as a good stopgap until you're ready to invest more money. Another thing that I do want to mention here as we're talking about this progression, and truthfully, there might be some people that start here, that just start with a website like this, and they just kind of do this and Instagram all at the same time. In wanting to hire a brand person, in wanting to hire someone that can create a site for you, they are going to ask you questions about your business and who you are and who you want to serve and your mission statement and your vision and all that sort of stuff. And if you haven't been in business for very long, or you haven't had training on how to put this kind of stuff together, those kind of things can be really difficult for you. And so that's why we kind of recommend doing something a little bit different here at the beginning as you're getting going, so that you can understand that stuff, so that whenever you move into the next one where you start to spend a little bit of money on your website, you know those answers. So what do you have to add?
Yeah, I think that like knowing where you're at, knowing where your skill set, like you said, knowing how much effort you want to put into this. We talk a lot about somebody could just have their friend film a wedding, but if you want a real wedding film, you need to hire a professional and do it right. And so, we've talked about, you could be starting out with something like an Instagram page, some kind of basic portfolio, a Vimeo page, or a YouTube page. That's fine to get started with. Moving up into something that's more beginner level, templates where you're putting in the work, you're paying for those, you're having to do it. And then like upgrading from that would be more moving into what we would call like an intermediate phase of website building. And I did this where I was purchasing a way more expensive template, usually $500 to $1,000 range, for a template where I went in and I spent a week. At that point, I'd hired somebody to do a little bit of graphic design and a little bit of copy for me. They had a logo for me and like some color palettes, so I could go in and change colors and do different things and write copy, and I could update my own headshots and all that stuff. And that would be like an intermediate. That's where a lot of people are, and there's nothing wrong with being in this category. I think this is going to be like the upper middle portion of the market. Wherever you're at, most people are going to be doing this. They're going to be buying $1,000 template, updating it themselves, maybe paying somebody a little bit, like a web person that knows what they're doing, to like make some tweaks to it, customize it a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with staying like right here for a long time. I know I stayed here for a long time. You can make a lot of money with a website that's intermediate. Again, we have templates over at howtofilmweddings.com that can fit this need in this $500 to $1,000 range that Austin with the Creative Cabana has made for us to have for sale on our site. There's a ton of different places to grab templates, but finding a template that fits the vibe and then taking that and then making it your own is going to be that next level. And we found that the more that you're investing into these things, the more your brand comes across where you can charge more. The legitimacy factor goes up there. What do you have to add, Nick?
Probably the biggest, con in this, and as you say, is it's going to just be more expensive. It's going to take a little more time and a little energy, especially whenever you start hiring out some of the design things and the copy things and like that kind of stuff. They're going to start asking you questions that I think even early on you can know. But again, if you haven't done this and you don't know who you want to work with and that kind of thing, it can be a little bit more difficult. I will say that if you do have the funds and you do have the energy, I think that you can jump right into this kind of phase if you have a clear picture of the types of weddings that you want to shoot and who you want to work with and how you want to present yourself. I think of our friends Brooke and Kayla from String Lights Films, and I think that they kind of jumped right into this very early on. They spent money on a website to get things looking how they wanted to. Yes, they knew that they would get better and they would change out videos and photos and stuff, but they had a really good idea of who they were and who they wanted to serve even before they shot a wedding, so they could kind of jump into this. And, this is, I think we're setting this up as this is the progression that we see and what we kind of would recommend for most people. But again, if you have the money or you have the vision and you know the direction that you want to go, maybe jumping into a phase like this where you're spending a little bit money on a template, or you're hiring a designer, but maybe they're a little bit on the cheaper side or something like that. Or, you're spending your money on a really good copywriter and then you're kind of taking the template and changing it how you want. So I think that that this is something, but again, time and money and energy are probably the biggest con. But again, a pro, it's more customizable. It fits more with who you are as a brand. It speaks more to who you want to work with because you know those things. It's going to be that middle intermediate phase there.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of people are good in this range. I mean, if you're especially like in Oklahoma, this is where I'm from. This is going to be people charging $3,000 to $10,000 for their wedding films. I mean, this is going to be a nice website that feels really custom, and you can live here. You don't have to advance anymore. And I was under the assumption that John Bunn Films or Redeemed Productions was, what it used to be called, was good with the template that I had purchased off of, I think it was Flow Themes or something like that. It's like, this is great. It looks cool. It works well. I'm happy. And then I started to really dig into what is it going to take for me to take my brand to the top level. I want to be charging more. And Nick was in the middle of rebranding and had paid for a company to rebrand and build him a website. And I went all in. I think I ended up spending somewhere in like upwards of around 10 grand with my website and hiring for copy to build the brand new John Bunn Films site. And this would be an advanced site. Most people, it's hard to tell a difference between like an intermediate and advanced, but it's like what I can do with the site is much better. And just the customization, it was built around what I wanted it to do. I had copy written. And so like in an ideal world, you would have copy for your website, the words, the way that it's going to feel, and a wireframe put together while you're building it, so that like the entire site is built around a specific niche that you're trying to do. And so like I'm aiming to reach wealthy brides and their mothers as they plan weddings together. Like that's the majority of who I'm reaching for. So the copy was written for those people. It was laid out on the website and built. So like my copywriting team and my website team were working together to build the website custom for me and make it exactly what I needed. And what I have seen with this, like with a full website and a full branding package, copywriting package, is that the day that I launched my website, I raised my starting prices from $8,500 to $12,500 just immediately, and I've never looked back. But I had to save up an extra 10 grand to be able to do this. And so I had to like really decide whether or not it was worth it. It was a big risk in my mind. Like I was worried about it. And then on the other side of it, looking back, I wish I would have just done that earlier. And so now I've got an advanced website and I'm looking, at what to do next or how to upgrade but I've been able to make little tweaks, and I'm sure in a few years I'll probably have another site rebuilt again for me based on how I've grown and where I'm growing and things like that. Nick, what do you have to say about we've started an Instagram or a web link all the way up to just like a basic 1 or 2 page template to a full template and now to a full custom website. Anything about the full custom website or things you're just thinking about when it comes to our audience?
Yeah, I think that this is something you can definitely strive for, and definitely something that you can want, that is going to will propel your business forward. The question is that you just have to kind of weigh, is it going to be worth it? And it's kind of hard to answer that question without being in that situation. Like you look at John, and if you would have looked at his website from 2019, he's like, I'm booking, $10 and $12 and $15,000 with this. Like, why do I need to update? And that was the whole conversation that he would have with me. He's like, I just don't know if I see the value. But I bet now if you asked him, was it worth it, him spending that 10,000+ in the new website and the copy and stuff, was that worth it? What would your answer be?
Very much worth it. Every penny of it.
Very much worth it. And so it's kind of hard. So I guess the question that you really need to sit and ask yourself, if you've been in it for a while and you would say that I have a really nice website that maybe it was a good template, or I already paid for copyright, like, do I need to go this next step and go that in depth with my branding and spend 10,000 plus on a design suite with branding and copy? Do I need to do all that question? I think the question you need to ask is, where do you want to go in your business? What do you want? Do you want to move up the quote unquote ladder so that you can make more money? Are you wanting to enter into a luxury space? Are you wanting to enter into what kind of space are you wanting to enter into? What are you wanting to do for your business? These are all questions that you need to ask, because the pros of this are you could be booking weddings for more than you ever thought was possible. Like some big things could happen because of this. The cons, it's probably money related. The other thing is working with these designers and stuff. I know Austin with the Creative Cabana, like he's booked out for a while and he couldn't even get started, for a few months, in working on like new projects and stuff. And then depending on the designer, it's going to take, somewhere from 2, 3 to 6 months to get this thing up and go. So there's a time commitment. This is kind of a con, which I know people like, oh, I'm ready to do this. I want to do this now, but there's some time and energy that takes doing it. And so I think the question you should just ask yourself is, where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? What's kind of your vision for your business? And it might not be worth it for where you are and your business and where you want and how much you want to charge and how much you want to, it might not be worth it for you to invest $10,000 in a new website branding. That might not be worth it for you, but it might be. And that's just the question that you need to ask yourself. So.
Yeah, and I think as we're like wrapping up a few weeks on our website, I hope that like you're seeing the value of really knowing who it is that you want to serve and what your website says about who you want to serve. We're hoping you're looking at mistakes that you've been making and you're changing those. And then also just kind of realizing where you're at on this scale, and is it time for you to move up from a one-page template to a full template? Is it time for you to move up from a full template to a custom website? Does that not make sense for you and your brand? I think we just like the idea of agitating that problem in your mind so you're thinking about it, because I think a lot of us are just like, I'll get to that later. I'm busy with backlog. So I don't have but the hard part with this is you're going to keep having backlog. If you're like, I was in the middle, and people want to know how they get out of the middle. It's making tweaks like this. The people that are charging 20 grand, 15 grand, 10 grand, whatever it is, the people that are charging that amount are the ones that are making investments like this into their brand.
Yeah, I really hope that this information over the last few weeks as we've talked about websites has been really beneficial and been really, really helpful to you. A couple of things. Number one, I want to make sure that you remember and know about our freebie, our little checklist that we have over at howtofilmweddings.com/website. There you can go in and take a look at and understand maybe some things, some tweaks that you need to make on your website. Wanted to let you know that next week we will be joined by Austin Blanchard, who works for the Creative Cabana. He's on our team, and he is someone that can really help out with websites. He has a lot of expertise, he has a lot of knowledge, and we wanted to ask him some questions to help us dive even deeper into websites. So we're really excited to have him here. John, it has been a pleasure to hang out with you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. Listeners, thank you for tuning in, and until next time, we will see ya.